Okay, in this lesson about cutouts, what I'd like to talk about is how to save a path so that if you have to close your program, like for example at the end of the hour and you need to come back the next day to work on it, how you can do that so you don't have to completely start over. So to begin, let's go to Google Classroom and we're going to pull down the hair image and we're going to open this in Photoshop once we get it downloaded. Okay. So to get started, what we want to do is we are going to zoom in and start our path. I'm going to start I'm going to start in this little divot down here. I think that'll be good. So I'm going to grab my pen tool and I'm just going to start going along. Again, normally I would be a whole lot more zoomed in than this, but for the sake of time, and also just because I want to be able to show you guys. I'm going to go a little bit quicker than I normally would. So if you feel the need, go ahead and pause the video and work your way around this. We do want to do a decent job of cutting out this hair because our next video is going to talk about how do we touch up hair. It's part of the reason that I chose this image because obviously this is a wig, but it's quite the hairdo that this gentleman has going on here. I'm going to try to get around the first guy's hair, and then we're going to pause and pretend we're at the end of the hour, and we need to save our assignment. Now notice, I just am going to cut this little loop-de-loop off because I think it's just not worth it trying to cut around that and then trying to get that so it looks decent. So I'm just going to actually cut that right off. And remember, you get to be um, the person that determines that. Obviously, if I look at something and I'm like, you clearly cut that off, then I might make you go back and do it. But I've honestly never had to do that with a student just because it's rare that you cut off something so deliberately. I mean, if you cut off an arm, then we'd probably have an issue. But like I said, I haven't ever had that happen, so don't worry too much about it. Just gonna come around here, come on down. Now you can kind of choose as you get closer to having these two together. Sometimes it's a good idea to kind of look and see what this hair situation is, because honestly we have some overlap here, but I don't know if I'm going to keep a lot of that. I might actually almost kind of trim to where it's darker, and that's something that you kind of have to decide as you're going through hair, because it can get really finicky to try to deal with someone that has kind of frizzy curly hair. So I'm going to get to the point where, let's say that I am starting to run out of time, the hour is coming down, I only have a few minutes left, and it's clear that I'm not going to finish my cutout. Don't ever panic if that is the case. Just keep going, and then I'm just going to get down to where his shirt is so I can remember kind of where I am. Okay. So let's say we're at the end of the hour and I've got this much of my path completed, but I'm clearly not done because I need to go around this guy. So how you end up saving a path is actually quite simple. The first step is that you go over to your Paths tab, and all you need to do to save it is actually rename it from the work path. So you can just double click on this. You could call it anything you want. You could call it hair cutout. You just can't leave it as work path. That's the only thing. You just have to rename it something. Okay, then you click OK. And then step 2 is that you need to save this as a Photoshop file. If you save it as a JPEG, it will not save the path. So you have to save it as a Photoshop file. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and then I'm going to navigate to my shared drive. Oops. Into my working pages, my name, lessons, Photoshop G, and then I'm just going to call it hair cutout. Now notice, because we did not, and I can't cancel out of this, but if we looked at our layers, remember, it's still a JPEG. It's that background layer is still locked. So we do have to change the format to a Photoshop file, and this is what a lot of people forget, and then they're in trouble. So you have to change the format to a Photoshop file if you want to be able to work with that path again. Okay? Then you hit your save button. And then let's pretend like we're logging off, we're closing down shop for the day, so you can close out of your hair cutout, and you don't have to close Photoshop all the way, but pretend now it's the next day, we come back, and we're ready to keep working on our path. So what we do is we go to our shared drive, we open up our Photoshop G folder, and we double click on our hair cutout, which should be a Photoshop file, and it's going to open up into our graphic. So all we need to do now is, don't panic if you don't see your path. What you should see over on your paths button or your paths tab is your hair cutout. All you need to do is actually click on that, and then you can zoom in, grab your direct selection tool, which is the little white arrow, and click on your path to get your anchor points back. And then we grab our pen tool, and to pick up your path, all you need to do is click on the very last anchor point you were on. Just click on it once, and then you get to continue. And that's as easy as it is. You don't have to, let's say we keep going and we get to the end of the hour and we're still not done with the cutout, which could happen if you have a big group cutout. That could definitely be something that happens. Don't panic. All you have to do is, once again, your your path is going to already be saved, and this is already saved as a Photoshop file. So at that point on the second day, you can actually just close it down and not even have to worry about doing anything extra. So that's actually kind of nice if you remember that first step. So I just did a little bit more here, and I just want to show you, in case you forget, that under that classwork, or classroom, under that Unit G lesson folders is that cutout tips. And when you're in there, it will talk about how to save your path. So it talks about going to the paths panel and changing the name. It just can't be work path. It just has to be whatever. And then you have to save it as a Photoshop file. Okay. And then it talks about how to pick up your path. So just like we did, we opened our Photoshop file, we clicked on our paths to activate your path, and then you choose your direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, and you just click on the path to get your anchor points, and then you grab your pen tool and you continue on. Okay, so it's very simple, very easy to do, and so that is how you can continue to work on your path, as long as you make sure that you save it. Now, in order to complete our next video, you can I might let this run. I'm just really kind of doing a very quick job of going around this guy's head and cutting out his hair. I want to get down and around his head, and then, kind of like we did with our football player, I'm just going to cut across their bodies. Obviously, if I were doing this for an assignment, for an actual spread, I would never really cut out their entire bodies. But to save time, I'm just coming down here and around, and we'll go down his shoulder a little bit so we can get that rest of the hair area there. And oops, one more down this way. And then I'm just going to cut all the way across here and close off my path right there. So I've got at least cut around the hair. That's the main objective, because that's our next lesson, is to show you how to fix that up. So make sure that you've cut all the way around there. Once you have the two heads cut out, then we're just going to remove it from the background. So double click your background layer, click OK. We go to paths, select our path holding the control key down to get our selection. We go select inverse, and then we hit our delete key. And then we have our completed, not really completed, but semi-completed cutout with the hairs. Okay. So if you need to, feel free to either pause this video and at least get the heads cut out, or take time in between the next two videos to finish getting these guys done. And then we will meet over in the next video and talk about how to clean up a cutout, particularly when working with hair.